We're Scott and Christine. If you're watching this, you're probably in temporary housing now and wondering how long this is actually going to take. When we had our first fire, we thought repairs would take maybe a couple months, and that felt reasonable.
Yeah.
That gap between what we expected and what actually happened created a lot of stress that didn't need to be there. In this video, we're going to talk about how long the fire repairs really take, what slows things down and what's normal, and how to protect your expectations so you don't feel constantly frustrated.
After our first fire, we assumed that once the demolition was done and the damaged materials were removed, rebuilding would move quickly.
We were thinking in terms of normal renovation timelines, but fire restoration is not normal renovation. It involves insurance approvals, specialty cleanings, inspections, ordering materials, and sometimes engineering reports. And all of that happens in a certain sequence.
Our first fire repair took significantly longer than we expected. Our second fire moved faster, not because the system changed, but because our expectations did.
One of the biggest misunderstandings is that repairs happen in parallel. They usually don't. Many steps depend on other steps being fully complete.
But this was really frustrating because we thought that companies would work together and coordinate to get things done, but that's not how it works at all. One company would do one aspect of the job, and when they were completely finished, then the next company would come in, but they're working on other projects as well, and they don't show up the next day. They show up when they're ready to. In a typical renovation, you're kind of the project manager and you can fire the workers if they don't show up and get things done quickly. With fire restoration work, it's a longer term plan and you're not going to do that, and they understand that's part of the process. So they're not in a hurry to get into your home. Our house often sat for months with rarely anything being done in the house, and there was nothing we really felt we could do about it the first time. We just sort of watched and waited, and the contractors left town. They went and worked on projects in other states. It was a very different experience than we expected.
One thing we really didn't understand, especially at the beginning, was that all of their estimates have to go back to insurance to get approved, and then they're waiting for them to get approved to even schedule the work. So these approvals could take 2 weeks or they could take 2 months, depending on your insurance company, depending on your adjuster, depending on if there's a hurricane in Florida when you live in Virginia, because they have certain assets that they reroute to areas that are heavily impacted. We ran into that during our first house fire. There was a hurricane in Florida. We had a fire, but a lot of the resources the insurance company had went south. And, ours sat on the desk for extra weeks to months. And once they're approved, then they schedule. So at that point, they have to find availability of certain contractors to do certain parts of the work.
Yeah, that was really frustrating for us the first time. The second time, we knew that might happen. And so we made sure we had much more comfortable housing, and we were happy where we were staying, and we weren't really in a rush actually to get back into our house. We made the situation work for us instead of just waiting for it to end and get back into our house. That changed everything for us.
During the second house fire too, I understood better the needs of my communication with both our adjuster and our contractor, and I facilitated a lot of that to keep things at least moving forward, even if there were delays on their end for whatever reason. In this case, you have to be your own advocate to keep things moving along so that they don't sit on their desk for 2 months.
Yeah, one thing that was very surprising to me that I often was asking Scott about was when the next phase of work would begin, but it wouldn't begin until the insurance company had written the checks, and those needed to be approved by the mortgage company. So the mortgage company is the one that actually owns your home. So they're making sure that everything is done piece by piece to protect their asset.
Yeah, that adds an extra step in the process as well. When you get certain checks for structural repairs from your insurance company, they have to you mail them to specific places for the mortgage company to get. They get the money, they sign the check, and you'll get the money that'll go directly to the contractor. So that extra step can add, 1 or 2 weeks, but that 1 or 2 weeks also pushes scheduling of your subcontractors out as well.
Yes. Yeah, your subcontractors aren't sitting there waiting. They're working on other jobs and they're committed to other things, and that delays everything even more, which again, really isn't a problem if you're happy in your housing. Find a place that works for you, enjoy where you're living, make the best of it, because this could take a really long time.
And then it goes back to a previous video, advocate for yourself for proper housing to keep you in your community and meet the lifestyle that you have on a regular basis, meet your family needs.
Yes, that's a big thing that people don't realize is you really need to advocate for yourself that your housing meets your current lifestyle or is better. We hear often about people who live in a small hotel room for an extended period of time. You don't need to do that. And if you're doing that, you're going to feel much more rushed and pressured and stressed for everything to get done. The second house fire we had was much more extensive. We had massive structural damage. We had a cut in the roof from the fire department, making sure there was no more flames, even though the fire was already out. And the first house fire had zero structural damage. It was all toxic smoke damage. So it was literally just pulling everything out and replacing it with clean materials. The second one you would think would take a lot longer, but they actually took the same amount of time, in part because the second time we knew where we could push and we knew where we shouldn't bother getting frustrated, and we just had to be patient.
Yeah. If one step stalls in this process, everything behind it stalls. Yeah. Finding that ideal temporary living situation, and sometimes hotels work for people. If you are just a couple or a single person, that might work for you, but advocate for proper living arrangements. And it won't feel so bad or so rushed in the long run.
Yeah, if you can look at it as this fire damage has phases of repair, we'll help you understand the realistic flow of that. Do you want to talk maybe about just phase one of the repair, which is emergency mitigation and boarding up of your property?
Yeah, so let's talk about the phases of this process. Phase one is emergency mitigation and board up, water extraction, drying, and securing the property. Timeline on that is going to be days to a couple of weeks. Phase two, pack out and cleaning. Your belongings are removed and inventoried, smoke remediation, demolition of damaged materials, and the timeline on that could be weeks to possibly months. Phase three, scope and insurance approval with contractors submitting estimates. Adjuster reviews, negotiation of the estimates if needed. Timeline is weeks to months. And this is where many of the delays happen. Phase four, rebuilding. Framing, electrical, plumbing, insulation, drywall, flooring, cabinets, and paint. Timeline is often several months. If permits are involved, that will add time. Depending on where you live, that will impact the process to different extents.
If materials are back ordered, that adds time.
If your fire happening during a busy season, like after a natural disaster, as we mentioned earlier, that can add time too. Even if the disaster was in another state or a different part of the country, your contractor may have left.
When you're displaced, every week feels longer.
You're not just waiting on a construction project, you're waiting on your life to return to normal.
Yeah. And because you don't see daily visible progress, it can feel like nothing's happening.
That can be extremely frustrating. But a lot of the early work is administrative, technical, and invisible.
For moderate interior fires, the repairs can take anywhere from 6 to 9 months.
For larger or structurally complex fires, it can easily extend to beyond a year. That doesn't mean something is wrong. It means this is a layered process involving multiple professionals. To help you understand the process and timeline, ask for a projected timeline and request milestone updates. Extremely important. Don't assume silence means inaction. Things do happen behind the scenes that you don't see, and expect revisions to the timeline.
One of the biggest emotional shifts we made was we stopped asking, why is this taking so long, and started asking, what step are we in right now?
There may be scope disagreements between the contractor and insurance, or hidden damage discovered during the demolition, which is very often.
Like asbestos. Yes, there is asbestos.
Yes, asbestos in our flooring in the one room that was damaged. Yeah. Engineering requirements like waiting for inspections and drawings. There may be material shortages, permit backlogs, and contractor scheduling issues. Your contractor may have a subcontractor that has other jobs that they're working on during this time. If you feel like it's taking longer than you expected, that's extremely common.
You're not being unreasonable for wanting your home back, but slowing your expectations protects your peace. This is also why it's important to have chosen housing that works for you and is comfortable. You may be in it for much longer than expected.
In the next video, we'll talk about something related to what you can do during this waiting period to make sure you're protected financially.
We're just people who lived through this twice and learned how to adjust our expectations the second time. If this helped, you're welcome to subscribe. Repairs take time. That doesn't mean recovery isn't happening.
In the next video, we're going to talk about what happens during the inventory process and how to make sure you're protected financially while repairs are underway.
You don't have to understand everything at once. Just take it one stage at a time.